Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at an ESL teaching script.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I think we all have encountered English language learners, and we all tried to learn new languages ourselves, but I don't think many people have stopped and thought about how that process works.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting
Yeah,
to look at the design behind how people learn languages. And actually what's really interesting is how those principles
yeah.
apply to like learning anything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be able to take some insights away that we can use in our everyday lives,
Yeah.
even if we're not trying to teach ESL.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. I'm excited about this. So the script lays out a really structured approach for the class, and they divide it into four main sections, and they are warm-up, core, lesson interactive activity, and wrap-up.
Hmm.
So it's a very structured approach. What do you think about that kind of approach?
Yeah, well, it makes me think about like building a house.
Okay.
You don't start with the roof.
Right.
You need a solid foundation.
Right.
And so this structure really tries to create that solid foundation by, having a nice welcoming warm-up activity and then going into more complex tasks like the core lesson and, really getting into applying the grammar and then wrapping up and reinforcing everything that they've learned.
So it's a very deliberate step-by-step kind of approach.
Yeah, exactly. It's like scaffolding, like you're building up to get to fluency.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So like if you're learning to code, for instance, you wouldn't jump right into building a complex website. You'd start with
Totally.
the basics.
Totally.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. So let's dive a little deeper into the specifics of each section. So the warm-up section in this script suggests starting with a word association game. Why do you think that is?
I think warm-up activities are really important to set the tone for the whole class
Okay.
and to kind of prime the students to be ready to learn.
Okay.
If you think about it, like if you're coming into a class feeling really anxious,
Yeah.
you're probably not going to learn as well. And so word association games like this one really break the ice and kind of reduce anxiety and get the creative juices flowing. But also it kind of subtly activates prior knowledge
Okay.
and gets them thinking in English,
Right.
which is really important.
Yeah. Okay. So after we get them nice and warmed up and loose, we move on to the core lesson, which is divided into vocabulary, grammar, and listening speaking practice.
Right.
So those are the three main sections.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you noticed in the script that was particularly interesting or unique in the way that they approached any of these?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that they emphasize active learning and engagement,
Okay.
like rather than just like passively absorbing information.
Okay.
So for example, when they're teaching new vocabulary, they suggest not just listing the words and definitions, but like providing example sentences
Okay.
and then having the students create their own sentences using the new words.
So putting the words into practice
Totally, putting them into
Yeah.
action. Yeah,
and seeing how they actually work in sentences.
exactly. And that taps into this really powerful cognitive principle called dual coding theory.
Okay.
And essentially, that's that our brains process visual and verbal information through different channels.
Interesting.
So by presenting new words, both visually and verbally,
Yeah.
and then having the learners use them actively,
Okay.
you're creating multiple pathways for that information to be like encoded and stored in their memory.
Oh, wow. So it's much more likely that they'll remember
Yeah.
that
You're
word
way more likely.
if they're seeing it and hearing it and using it.
Exactly.
You
It's
know.
not just looking it up in the dictionary,
Right.
it's actually experiencing it.
Right. Bringing it to life.
Exactly.
Okay, so after vocabulary, we move on to grammar. And in this particular script, they focus on the present simple tense.
Mm-hmm.
Grammar can be a little bit dry, so how do they make it more engaging?
Well, I think the script wisely avoids overwhelming the learners with like a barrage of grammatical rules.
Yeah.
It breaks it down into manageable chunks.
Okay. It provides clear explanations, visual aids, and most importantly, lots of practice exercises.
Yeah.
It's really trying to move beyond rote memorization
Oh, okay.
and help the learners internalize the grammar rules through repeated application.
So understanding how to actually use it in real life.
Exact.
Not just memorizing the rules.
Exact.
Gotcha. And then that leads very nicely into the listening speaking practice section.
Right.
And they've got a great example in here of a simple conversation followed by role playing.
Yeah.
So what do you think is role playing actually effective for language learning?
I think it can be really effective
Okay.
because it simulates real-world communication
Okay.
and it encourages the learners to think on their feet and use the language spontaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And, it can be a little awkward at first, but it often leads to laughter
Sure.
and a sense of shared accomplishment.
Right.
And that just enhances learning.
So it's that idea that, like, if you're having fun,
Yeah.
you're going to learn better.
Okay. All right. So we've done our warm-up. We've gotten through the core lesson. Now we're moving on to the interactive activity section.
Right.
This is where things get a little bit more hands-on.
Yeah, definitely.
So in this script, they suggest that the students plan a weekend trip in groups.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
I love that idea.
Okay.
I think collaborative tasks are so important
Why is that?
because it really gets them communicating in English.
Okay.
And it forces them to move beyond, like, individual words and grammar rules
Yeah.
and to, like, use the language in a more holistic, dynamic way.
Yeah.
They have to negotiate meaning, express their ideas,
Yeah.
work together to achieve a common goal,
Right.
like all in English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really putting all those pieces.
Totally. It's like taking all the pieces of the puzzle and
Brilliant.
putting it together to create that full picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
But-
Yeah. I see that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after the interactive activity, we come to the final stage, which is the wrap-up. What's the main focus of the wrap-up?
I think the wrap-up is really about reinforcing what they've learned and setting the stage for continued practice.
Okay.
So it's really important to review the key takeaways, address any questions, and provide specific homework assignments to practice what they've learned outside of the classroom.
So that the learning doesn't stop when the class ends.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Consistent practice is so important
Yeah.
for skill development.
For any history.
For anything, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I see they also have a section on additional tips. But before we jump into those, I'm curious, from what we've seen so far, what has stood out to you the most in terms of this script?
You know, I think what's really cool about this script is that it goes beyond just teaching language.
Yeah.
It's like they're really fostering a love of learning.
Wow.
They're building confidence and equipping learners with the tools and strategies they need to become, like, successful communicators.
Oh, so it's like they're not just teaching English, they're teaching people how to learn.
Exactly. And that, I think, is what makes this so insightful
Mhm.
and relevant, even for those of us who aren't ESL teachers.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay.
So are you ready to dive into those additional tips?
Absolutely. Let's do.
I think there's going to be some more really cool stuff in there.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, let's go.
All right, let's jump into these additional tips.
Okay, so the first one is all about using visual aids.
Hmm.
And they talk about things like pictures, flashcards, videos, and they can make a huge difference in helping learners grasp abstract concepts. But why do you think that is? I mean, we've already talked about dual coding theory.
Yeah, I think it's not just about creating stronger memory connections,
Mhm.
but it's also about creating a more engaging and multisensory learning experience.
Okay.
You know, like, think about it. Would you rather just listen to somebody drone on about grammar rules?
Yeah.
Or would you prefer to see those rules illustrated with colorful diagrams and real-life examples?
Yeah, I'm a visual learner for sure.
Me too.
Okay, so visual aids are super important.
Yeah.
What's the next tip?
Okay, the next one is about incorporating games into the learning process. So they suggest things like word bingo charades, even just a quick quiz.
Games
Yeah.
in an ESL class.
Yeah, I know it sounds kind of funny, but
I mean, I get that they're fun,
yeah,
but are they really effective for learning a language?
absolutely. I think games provide a fantastic opportunity for learners to practice their language skills
Okay.
in a relaxed and enjoyable environment.
Right.
When you're playing a game, you're not as worried about making mistakes,
Right.
so you're more likely to take risks and experiment with the language.
Okay. Yeah.
Plus, the competitive element can be a great motivator.
Yeah.
You know, it pushes learners to really use their language skills to the best of their abilities.
Right. It's like when you're playing a sport, you're not thinking about how much you're exercising. You're just
Totally.
in the game, right?
Exactly. You're in the flow.
Okay. What else do we have?
Okay, this next one is a really important one. It's about encouraging questions. And they emphasize the importance of creating a safe and supportive learning environment where learners feel comfortable asking for clarification or expressing their confusion.
Yeah. I remember when I was learning Spanish, I was so afraid to ask questions in class
Oh, yeah.
because I didn't want to sound stupid.
Totally.
And then I ended up just not understanding anything.
Right. Well, that's the thing. When learners hesitate to ask questions,
Mhm.
they miss out on crucial opportunities to deepen their understanding
Yeah.
and address any misconceptions.
Yeah.
You know, a good ESL teacher We'll create a classroom culture
Right.
where questions are not only welcomed but encouraged.
Yeah.
They'll make it clear that there's no such thing as a stupid question
Yeah.
and that everyone's learning journey is unique.
Okay.
It's really about building that trust and rapport with the learners.
Right. So they feel comfortable to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What's the next one?
All right, this one might seem obvious,
Okay.
but it's often overlooked. Patience.
Oh, patient.
Patience. Learning a new language takes time and effort.
Sure.
There will be moments of frustration, plateaus, setbacks.
Yeah, it's a journey.
It's a journey, not a sprint.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't expect to become fluent overnight.
Right. It's like learning to play an instrument.
Totally.
You're not going to be a virtuoso overnight.
Right. It takes consistent practice dedication.
Yeah.
A willingness to embrace the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the teacher's patience and encouragement become crucial.
Yeah.
A good ESL teacher will understand that every learner progresses at their own pace
Right.
and will provide individualized support to help them overcome obstacles.
So it's all about celebrating those small wins along the way, right?
Precisely. And that brings us to our final tip, celebrating small wins.
Okay.
Every new word learned, every correctly conjugated verb,
Mm-hmm.
every successful attempt at conversation.
Yeah.
All of these achievements, no matter how small, deserve to be acknowledged and celebrated.
Yeah. I was actually reading something about that the other day about the power of positive reinforcement.
Oh, yeah.
When you focus on celebrating those wins, you're more likely to stay motivated
Absolutely.
and engaged.
It creates this positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
When learners feel good about their progress,
Mm.
they're more likely to continue putting in the effort,
Right.
which leads to further progress
Right.
and even more positive reinforcement.
It's like a snowball effect.
Totally. A win-win situation.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to recap the additional tips we have, using visual aids, incorporating games, encouraging questions, being patient, and celebrating small wins.
Right.
And what I think is so interesting is that these tips aren't just for teaching ESL.
Right.
They could really be applied to anything.
Any learning situation.
Right. Whether you're learning a new skill, tackling a complex project at work,
Absolutely.
trying to understand a difficult concept.
Yeah, these are universal principles of effective learning.
Yeah.
And what's so cool about this ESL teaching script
Wow.
is that it highlights these principles in a really clear and practical way.
Yeah, it's like a blueprint
Yeah.
for becoming a better learner.
Totally.
Okay, so we've covered the structure of the class. We've gone through these amazing additional tips.
Hmm.
But I want to circle back to something you said earlier about how this script isn't just about teaching English.
Right.
It's about teaching people how to learn.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
By understanding the principles of effective language acquisition,
Okay.
we can gain really valuable insights into how our brains learn
Mm-hmm.
and how we can optimize that process for any subject or skill.
It's like we're unlocking a secret code
Totally.
to learn anything better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap things up, I want to touch on one more thing that really jumped out at me in this script, and it's the emphasis on cultural exchange,
Yes.
because learning a new language is so much more
Oh, it's so much more.
than just the words and the grammar.
It's about opening a door to a whole new world.
Yeah, it's a whole new culture.
A new way of seeing the world,
Yeah.
a new way of connecting with people from different backgrounds.
It's like a whole universe of new experiences,
Totally.
perspectives, connections.
Yeah, and that's what makes ESL teaching so powerful
Mm-hmm.
and rewarding.
Yeah, it really is. It's like you're building bridges
Absolutely.
between cultures.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've explored the structure of the class, uncovered those fantastic teaching tips, and even touched on the cultural impact of language learning.
We did it.
It's amazing how much depth we've uncovered
Yeah, from just this one script.
from this one script.
It's amazing.
Right. But here's the big question I have.
Yeah,
How can we as non-teachers use these insights
right.
in our own lives?
That is the question. And that is exactly what we're going to explore after the break.
Okay, I cannot wait. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on this. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle that big question. How can we use all this stuff as non-teachers
Right.
in our everyday lives to be better learners?
Well, I think it all comes back to applying those core principles that we've been talking about.
Okay.
Like, remember that scaffolded approach?
Mm-hmm.
Breaking down complex tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter if you're learning to code
Right.
or play a musical instrument, or even write a novel,
Mm-hmm.
starting with a solid foundation and gradually building upon it
Yeah.
is crucial.
So instead of being completely overwhelmed
Right.
by like the bigness of it,
Exactly.
you can chunk it down.
Break it down. Yeah.
Okay.
And remember those visual aids?
Yeah.
They're not just for language learning.
Okay.
Using diagrams, mind maps,
Right.
even sketching out concepts
Yeah.
can help you visualize and understand complex information.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And what about games? I mean, can we really use games
Yes.
to learn things besides vocabulary words?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. A lot of video games actually teach really complex problem-solving skills,
Mhm.
strategic thinking, even teamwork.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, but even simpler games,
Okay.
like flashcards to memorize facts
Oh, yeah.
or creating quizzes to test your knowledge,
Yeah.
can make learning so much more fun and engaging.
Okay. So it's all about taking the chore out of learning
Totally.
and making it fun.
Yes. Make it fun.
Okay. And what about that emphasis on asking questions?
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes I'm hesitant to ask questions, especially if I'm in a group,
Right.
and everybody seems to get it but me.
I know it's a common feeling,
Yeah.
but remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Okay.
In fact, asking questions is a sign that you're actively engaged
Okay.
and that you want to understand the material.
Right.
So don't be afraid to speak up and seek clarification.
Okay.
It could be that other people have the same question.
Right. They're just too afraid to ask.
Exactly.
So embracing that beginner's mind
Yes.
and just being willing to admit you don't know something is really
right.
important.
Really important. And that ties into the importance of patience. Learning takes time.
Mm-hmm.
We all learn at our own pace.
Yeah.
It's crucial to be kind to ourselves,
Yeah.
to celebrate our progress,
Yeah.
and not get discouraged by setbacks.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. Rome wasn't built in a day.
For sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of celebrating progress, that was one of my favorite things
Oh, yeah.
from the additional tips.
Me too.
When you take the time to acknowledge even the small wins,
Absolutely.
it just keeps you going.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
When we celebrate our achievements, no matter how small,
Mm-hmm.
it really boosts our motivation
Yeah.
and reinforces that commitment to the learning process.
So it's like giving yourself little rewards along the way.
Yeah. Little rewards.
Yeah, to keep you motivated.
Totally.
So to recap, when you're trying to learn something,
Mm-hmm.
break it down into chunks.
Yes.
Use visual aids, make it fun. Ask questions, be patient, and celebrate your wins.
That's it.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit now
Me too.
to approach learning.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah. Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive into ESL teaching,
Mm-hmm.
I think what we've learned is that it's not just about teaching ESL.
Right.
It's about teaching people how to learn.
Exactly. And that's the magic.
Yeah, and that's really cool. I think we can take a lot away from this,
Absolutely.
use in our everyday lives.
Totally.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes. Thank you.
And until next time, keep those minds curious
Stay curious.
and never stop learning.
Never stop.